Hello everyone, this is Santiago Vásquez.
And I'm Martin Cervantes,
Welcome to the DOTTE POD.
where communication truly matters.
There we go, and we have a very special day.
Yes.
Would you please tell us a little bit about what's going on today?
Let me tell you, every day is a very special day, especially when we're given the gift of life.
There we go.
You know, this amazing weather, I get to see the round, hot thing every day now. It's not raining, it's not cold, so this is perfect.
You mean you're talking about the egg that is fried up in the space?
Exactly. Oh, that's what it is.
It's a fried egg. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Earth is also flat.
Okay. All right. Oh, wow. I'm learning something every day.
Every single day.
Wow.
Just don't get to the edge of it.
I need to slow down there because I don't want to fall off the cliff there. Well, today's a very special day. We have an amazing person. I've known her for a couple of years, and she's doing a lot for Wyandotte County. She also works for Wyandot Center. Miss Christine Swenson. Welcome.
Is that okay if we call you Christine? Can we
Yes.
call you Christine?
Yes,
Is that okay?
please. Yes, please.
Okay. So Christine, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your beginnings and education and exactly what you do for the Wyandot Center.
Absolutely. So my journey in mental health really started when I was a junior in high school. So I took a psychology course, and I went to a small school, so I was really glad that I actually had this opportunity to take this psychology class. And at that point I was fascinated. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, all this stuff I was learning. And so I decided that I was going to go and get my bachelor's degree in psychology.
Okay.
Now I'm from rural Missouri, so kind of a small town up a little bit further north. So I really didn't have a lot of experience with a lot of different things, but I went to college. It was a little bigger, but still kind of a small community. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and again, that just continued my fascination with this career, and I knew that I wanted to work in mental health. Now, I didn't know exactly what jobs were out there for mental health at the time. So I started applying. These were back in the days when you actually filled out paper for applications and not going online. So I sent some resumes out, and lo and behold, I get this call from Wyandot Center for a case manager position. I was like, okay, I don't even know where Wyandotte County, Kansas is. I don't know what a case manager is, but that works in the mental health field. I want to do that. And so I was lucky enough to be offered a job, and I started my career out as a community-based case manager in Wyandotte County. And I would say this is where my love for both the mental health field and Wyandotte County grew tremendously, because as a community-based case manager, which I'm sure I'll get the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what that is, you really spend a lot of time in the community in Wyandotte County. So most of my days were out in the community, helping people in their homes or in other places within the county, and I learned so much about that. From there, I decided I wanted to go back and get my master's degree in social work. So I went to the University of Kansas, got my master's degree in social work, had a few other job responsibilities within Wyandotte Center over the last few years. It's been a minute. And now I'm the executive director with Wyandotte Center. So what that means for us is I oversee the adult services within Wyandotte Center.
Well, let me take you back to junior in high school. You were 17, right?
I was 17.
What made you think or realize this is what I want to do? This is my dream job. This is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
Sure. So I think, I took that first psychology class. And so I started hearing and learning about all of these different things that really the brain does, that for some folks, it develops in different ways. For some folks, it results in experiencing different things than other people experience. And at that point, I was just really interested. At that point, I was like, well, how does this happen? How does this brain do these different things? And I just really, really wanted to keep learning and learning more about it. So in those early years, it was really just kind of like, oh, wow, this is the different things your brain can do was just very fascinating to me.
Wow.
I'm assuming that you probably had a phenomenal teacher.
He probably wouldn't have known it at the time, but he did make quite the impact, and he was actually our history and social studies teacher. So I've often wondered, how did he end up teaching a psychology class? But yeah, it made a difference for sure.
Probably like most teachers, multitasking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yes.
They need
Yes.
somebody in this
Yes.
field.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this journey takes you from your small town to Wyandotte County. That is probably, part of the metro area here in the Kansas City area. And so you get out of the educational system, and now you are working, really working with people that are going through the trials and tribulations of mental health problems or issues. Was it all about what college was teaching you, or now you face this wave that hit you square in the face and you go, oh my God,
What am I
this
doing?
is
Yeah.
What did I get myself into?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what you learn in school is so different than what you learn when you're actually working with people. I learned a lot about different illnesses, different symptoms, how those things can happen. And I would say that helped and prepared me for meeting with people, right? Because you have this underlying understanding of what that person might be experiencing. So in that way, I didn't go into it with maybe some fear or not knowing what was going on, right? So sometimes when we're working with mental health, sometimes folks don't understand what's happening. And so what the education did was give me that background, right? So that I could understand a little bit more like what might be happening for this person from a biological perspective, or from, just understanding those different things. Understanding that maybe someone hearing voices, I could understand that, well, that's part of schizophrenia. That's something that person experiences, and helped me. But what it didn't help me for was the human aspect of the work we do. You go in with this, because up until this point, I hadn't had a lot of experience working with individuals who had mental health symptoms. At this point, it had been primarily just from an educational standpoint. So when I started interacting with folks with mental health symptoms, I learned so much more about it, and it went way beyond what school or books could ever teach me. I learned different things about a person in their home environment, the strengths they had, the resiliency they had, the different things they taught me about the world that they lived in, about the struggles they had, but again, about how much they bring to their community, their families, all of these different things. And I had one person who I worked with who always would tell anybody, including me, that she trained me. And she did. She trained me in life. She trained me about, the strengths that people have, and how much they can do in their lives, and that, and it was also very humbling, because if you think about a younger person without a lot of experience coming into the homes of people, working with them, folks invited me into their lives. They invited me into their homes. They invited me into their families, and that's an incredibly humbling experience that has stood with me 20 years later.
So besides helping them professionally, you develop relationships with them. Do you keep in touch with them? Or once they're out of the program, they're out?
That is a great question, and I think that's where mental health can get hard. Being a provider, you are in a professional relationship with somebody, and so the services we provide are absolutely professional mental health services. And there's a lot of things that you need to be mindful of with that. And at the same time, when you're in a helping profession, you can't help but care about somebody and what happens with them. You can't help about celebrating their successes with them, or experiencing their sad times or their trauma with them. You can't help but care about them. And within mental health, the most important part of all of it is relationship, connecting with another individual, and having that genuine desire to get to know them, but also to help them and see them succeed in life, and succeed in their goals, not my goals. It's never about what my goals are for an individual. It's always about what their goals are, and we get to help them along that way. However, as a professional, if we're not in that professional relationship, there are certain rules that you have to go by. And one of those is, if we're not in a helping relationship, ongoing communication, like in a friendship way or outside of the professional relationship, that is something that typically social workers, as part of our ethics, is that we wouldn't have those relationships outside. It's called dual relationships, and you want to just make sure, because the professional relationship, especially with mental health, is so important to have that is trustworthy, and that you can be able to have that relationship in a way that you can be able to help folks. And so you want to make sure that it's really clear in those things. So I wouldn't say I have a lot of ongoing relationships with people that I may have had served with as far as friendships or anything like that. But yeah, absolutely, you care about folks. You want to help them succeed. And working in a community mental health center, it's nice because I can see some of the folks that I worked with 20 years ago, and I can still interact with them. I can still talk with them, hear how they're doing, hear updates with them. And it's still within that ethical guidelines, but I can still keep in contact with them.
So, based on, you mentioned before, biologically speaking, some of the mental health issues that can occur or happen to anybody, and based on some of the previous interviews that we have with other experts, so mental health issues can be caused by biological issues. Is it something that can come with us from birth? Is it something that is hereditary?
That is a great question, and there's so much research being done about that right now, and has been for years. There are some illnesses that do have a genetic component to it, which means that it can be passed down. You know, maybe you have somebody in your life who has had schizophrenia. That is something that they've been able to show like genetic ties to, and so some of those things can be things that, from a biological standpoint, that are there. Other things can happen through environment, through trauma, through kind of different things that you're going through. So just because you maybe had a family member that had schizophrenia doesn't mean that you are going to have schizophrenia. But it is still possible that it can be hereditary, or it can be having that biological component to it.
Would you give us an example of environmental issues that affect our mental health?
Absolutely. PTSD is one of the biggest ones I can think of as post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a diagnosis that we oftentimes see, and absolutely comes from someone's environment. So you can develop PTSD by experiencing a traumatic event. So sometimes folks who are in the military and go over or deployed and have those traumatic things that they may see on a regular basis, through those experiences they may have PTSD. Or somebody who's experienced sometimes been in a natural disaster, a tornado, for example. So those are things in which you can develop some mental health conditions through that. Also things like depression. Sometimes depression comes later on in life, and sometimes that can be through environment. You know, older individuals might be more at risk for depression because they're starting to lose some of their loved ones, you know, people they may have grown up with or lived their lifetime with. And so those are some examples how your environment can also do that. And there's also a study called the ACEs study, which is adverse childhood events. And there's a lot of research around adverse childhood events.
Okay.
And as you look at those people who have had more experiences as children that were traumatic, that can also have a little bit of a higher likelihood that that person might have mental health struggles or addictions later on in life too.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm speaking for experience now. And I'm learning a lot throughout this podcast. And my culture, our community, my family, we never spoke about this. It's almost like a forbidden topic. You know, oh, he's crying. Oh, come on, get up, go, you know, do it again, and don't be a baby type of thing, you know. We have not acknowledged that there is mental health issues that we are dealing with, you know, and then and sometimes it's just like, you know, we try to be hard on our kids, especially boys. You know, come on, don't, and excuse my, I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but don't be a girl. Don't cry.
Yeah,
come
that's
on,
the
get
first
up.
thing they tell
You know,
girls.
that is the first thing that we hear. Instead of, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And even ourselves as an adults, I'm just feeling down. I'm just feeling down. Sometimes we are depressed and we don't even acknowledge that because how we were raised. You know, you are not to talk about that. You can't talk about this. You just, you know, put yourself together and do it again. So, you know, and throughout these conversations, I hope that our community learns to open up and to know that we are not alone. There's professionals willing to help us out.
Is it possible that somebody could be suffering from anxiety or depression, not knowing, it's not able, he or she might not be able to understand it, and expresses it, when I say it, the anxiety or depression through a form of anger or explosive behavior?
Oh, absolutely.
Behavior that could lead to crime, behavior that could lead even the most professional of persons to commit an act that they will not commit if they were mentally sound.
Sure. You know, and that's absolutely, I mean, here's my thought on it. One, as far as kind of the stigma associated with mental health, you're not alone, and in your culture, whereas that may be something is in there, it's widespread in our society too. You know, is that idea that we have to kind of hide those things, or we should be able to get through this, right? That there must be something wrong with me, so nothing's wrong with me, so I'm fine, I'm going to go through this. And so we really want to try to change that language. There's not something wrong with you. You know, what happened? You know, what's happened with you? Because we want to change that to kind of get away from that there's some kind of defect that someone has if they're experiencing anxiety, depression, or any other mental health symptoms. And Santiago, to your question, yes, I mean, there are times when folks can be experiencing mental health symptoms and not understand it. We see that with depression, we see that with anxiety, schizophrenia, psychosis. Oftentimes there's this big old word that is being talked about a lot more than it was before, this idea of anosognosia. And that is a big word. It's usually more associated with psychosis. But what it means is that the person honestly doesn't know that they're sick. They don't know that they are having symptoms. And so when they're experiencing something, they don't understand maybe what's going on, or maybe they don't even know that there's anything going on with that person or experiencing anything different. And it's the illness playing a part of that. Now, as far as depression and anxiety is concerned, I think a lot of times that can absolutely manifest itself in anger, right? Because, you know, your emotions are emotions. They come to you. They come in here. Emotions are neither good nor bad. They're just emotions, and being able to experience them. But sometimes it can come out as anger, irritability, otherwise withdrawn or anything like that. And you may not understand what's going on. Now, as far as committing acts or things, there are some times when, you can see folks who might engage in a behavior that they may not otherwise be engaged in, because their mental health symptoms have exceeded their ability to manage them. And that's some of the things that we do is we partner with law enforcement. We partner with the judicial system. We partner with correction systems in general, with community corrections, because there are individuals who sometimes with their mental health symptoms, again, if they've exceeded their ability to cope, so kind of they at that point, the coping skills or the tools they have are not being effective in managing those symptoms, we work with them so that we can try to help get them into services or provide mental health treatment so that we can help that so they won't engage in those behaviors that end up sometimes with law enforcement or the criminal justice system.
Now, bipolar. See, that's something that I have a hard time understanding it, because you can be with someone, let's say I'm with Vásquez, he's happy and cracking jokes and all this. Next thing you know, he's mad at me. Don't talk to me and going off on me. How does that play a role in what you guys do here? You see a lot of bipolar people in here?
Sure. So one of the things that we talk about too, since you mentioned it, is that we really believe in kind of this idea of person first language, right? So when we talk about someone with bipolar disorder, we might say, you know, instead of a bipolar person, person with bipolar disorder, because it starts getting us thinking about things in a different way, right? Okay. Sometimes we don't, if someone has cancer, we don't refer to them as like, hey, that's the person over there, you know, that's the cancer person. You might say, oh, that person has cancer. So that's one of the things that we really try to do too, is kind of start talking about that person first language. So somebody with bipolar disorder, it kind of just helps us start shifting it, because what we say matters, right? The language we use, it helps us to shape that too. Now, as far as the question, so kind of thinking about somebody with bipolar disorder, Yes, we do see individuals with bipolar disorder, but honestly, the rate of people with bipolar disorder is not as high as sometimes you would maybe think. I think right now it's about maybe, I'd have to go back and look at my statistics, and I don't have them ready with me, so I don't want to say them wrong, but maybe, honestly, about maybe 10% of the population, maybe even less than that, has bipolar disorder. And so sometimes we kind of think about it in those different things as far as, oh, this person might be, mad at me one day and happy the next person, they may have bipolar disorder. Well, what we do is we really sit down with that person and try to understand what they're going through to be able to formulate that diagnosis. Because sometimes it may be that that person has bipolar disorder. It may not be that that person does not have bipolar disorder. They just have a lot of different things going on in their life that leads to some of those mood swings that come through. Bipolar disorder, when you get into bipolar disorder 1 especially, it is marked with more significant changes. So it's not just kind of those mood swings, but it's other things like bipolar disorder in particular is marked by episodes of mania and episodes of depressions where that person may have that. Now, usually you're not going to have that in the same day, right? Because that's where they look at that, is how long have they been in those periods of mania and how long those periods of depression are. And so that's one of the things that we do, is we're going to sit down with people and really talk to them and say, what's going on? We're going to do an evaluation, we're going to do an assessment, and then we're going to help kind of make sense of that. And sometimes that might lead to a diagnosis, to be able to say, based on what you're telling me, this is kind of that diagnosis that you may have, and then here's some of the treatment recommendations we would have for it. But that's, so to answer your question, it's kind of what we do, is because sometimes, you can look at somebody and say, oh wow, they may have depression. They could also just be having a really bad day. Maybe there's something that's gone in their life that has impacted them towards led to this sadness, but it may not get to that diagnosis of depression. And so that's where the qualified mental health professionals, those licensed master's level folks, that's what we're trained to do. That's what we receive that education to do, is really be able to do those evaluations to determine that.
So now those diagnoses have to be, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Does he have to be detected, for lack of a better word, by an MD?
No. Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. So you have a licensed master's level clinicians. So they're called qualified mental health professionals or licensed mental health professionals. And a lot of times those are individuals with master's degree in various different fields, such as social work, psychology, counseling, marriage and family therapy. And folks at the master's level can diagnose individuals. Doctors can too, MDs, nurse practitioners can too, but you don't have to have that in the state of Kansas anyway to diagnose somebody.
Now, I don't know if you can speak about this, but what percentage of the people suffering from mental health issues require some type of a medication in order to have the health issue, the mental health issue that they're going through under control? Or is it therapy? Is therapy enough?
Sure. So that in and of itself is a great question. So medication management. There are a lot of medications that can help individuals manage different things such as depression, psychosis, anxiety. And I would say here that we have the most people served in med services. So when we look at the Community Mental Health Center in general, at how many people we serve a year, I would say that the vast majority of them do receive med clinic services. But whether or not that's enough, or whether therapy is enough, or whether case management is enough, is we have all of those individuals. We have folks who are in maybe case management services who have decided that medication is not part of their treatment plan, is not part of their recovery, not part of what they want things to look like. Same thing with therapy. And what I would say is it really depends on the individual. Medication is, I don't know if any one service, whether it be medication, therapy, case management, is by itself something that can, oh gosh, how do I want to say it? Because really want to think through this one and how I can say it. I think it's all part of the puzzle, right?
Yes.
And for some individuals, medications alone might be able to be helpful to them. For some individuals, therapy alone might be able to be helpful to them. It just depends really on that individual and where they're at in their recovery. Might be that maybe when the person is earlier on in maybe symptoms, or at points where they might be struggling a little bit more, having all of those services wrapped around them would be helpful to them, and then it just kind of progresses and moves forward. So I guess, you know, that I do have folks, and I've worked with many folks who've decided that medications is not part of their journey, that they would like to learn other ways of being able to manage their symptoms, and that's effective for them. For other folks, I've heard people say, you know, I'm on this medication and I never want to stop it because I don't like what it was like without my medication. So it really is individualized, and that's what we want to do with folks with mental health professionals. There's not a one-size-treatment or one-size-fits-all treatment approach. We really have to know what's important to that person. What would they like? Because there's medications in particular, you know, they have a lot of side effects too. And so you have to work with those individuals to find out what's going to be helpful for them.
So how the taking of drugs, whether it's prescribed, whether you're consuming shrooms, and we haven't spoken about that the THC of today and the marijuana is no longer what it was 10 years ago, or the marijuana that people were doing in Woodstock. And I was having a conversation with
What's that? Marijuana. I've never heard of it.
I don't want to sound too somber, but I was having a conversation with a young lady about this. I said, listen, let me tell you something, okay? The THC that people are smoking today is extremely potent. And THC, when consumed out of control, can give you this kind almost like the same syndromes, because everybody has a different type of brain. Of course, you know that better than I do. The same syndromes as schizophrenia. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Have you seen anything like that could have been induced by the use of drugs?
Oh, sure. So one of the things that we look at when we're doing diagnosis is we have this big old book. It's called the DSM-5. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical, I can't remember the S's, manual. And that's kind of what we use to be able to diagnose individuals. There's absolutely a lot of substance use and co-occurring use too. So when we say co-occurring disorders, that's where we talk about someone who has mental health diagnosis and substance use. And so that's when we mean co-occurring, because they can have both. Yes, there can be substance-induced psychosis. That's what we would refer to it as, or substance-induced mental health symptoms, and what we look at is it's very hard sometimes, to be able to say what came first, the mental health symptoms or the substance use, because you can look at both of them oftentimes. Sometimes people use substances because they are also struggling with mental health symptoms that are not being treated. So they've turned to substances to help with that, because it's giving them whatever relief that they might be looking for in that moment. Unfortunately, it's short-term relief, and so that's where sometimes those addictions can come from. Or you can have substances where someone may become addicted and use substances, and then you can see things that mirror psychosis, like things, sometimes we see a lot, like sometimes PCP in particular, PCP when someone's using it can oftentimes look a little bit like psychosis, or with meth too, because it can look, the symptoms can look similar to maybe someone experiencing psychosis. What you can look for though is, are those symptoms there when someone's not using? So for example, someone with schizophrenia, they're going to have those symptoms even outside of when they're using. But if maybe they never had any of those symptoms before they started using some of those substances, and they only have those symptoms, they only experience those behaviors when they're using it, that's going to kind of lead us down a little bit more, which one is this? Versus other times we might look to be able to say, okay, well, this person had these symptoms before they started using, they continue to have them despite their use.
Yes.
This might lead us more to it, but the prevalence is absolutely there. There's a very high percentage of individuals who have those co-occurring disorders.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read that you also help people with drug addiction here to rehab.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's actually something new we're getting into. So for many, many years, we've been primarily providing mental health services, and then we would work with many partner organizations if someone also had substance use disorder. So we would work with a lot of different folks, refer them to different places, and we would still provide their mental health treatment, because sometimes, it's really hard to be able to say, go get your mental health treatment taken care of, and then we'll work on addictions, or vice versa. So we would try to we would still provide their mental health services. We would just work with those other providers. As of this year, actually, we have become licensed as a substance use disorder provider too. So we will be continuing to grow and develop those services here so that we can provide that too.
So along the lines of Mr. C's question, tell us about the services that you provide here. That's extremely important.
Absolutely.
For our community, because I drove north and I passed this place. I was like, okay, I couldn't find it. I was like, oh my God, I'm not.
Are you
in
asking
line.
for services for a reason, or
Well,
to inform our community?
Listen. So tell us a little bit about the services that Wyandot Center provides to our community.
Absolutely. So Wyandot Center is a community mental health center here in Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County. So across the state, there are 26 community mental health centers that serve various different counties. Some serve many counties, some serve one county. We serve one county, and that's Wyandotte County. And as a community mental health center, our goal is to provide comprehensive community mental health services to the folks who reside in Wyandotte County. And so comprehensive is really the key there, because we really want to look at how we can provide services that meet the needs of folks. And as we've already said, people's needs are different. There is no one size fits all treatment approach. So what we really try to do is provide those services that we feel like are going to help. When I think about our services, I feel like they fall into primarily 4 broad categories. One is an assessment and an evaluation, and that is something we can do for anybody who comes through, because you just, again, until we're able to really sit down and chat and talk about what is going on with you, that's going to help kind of guide the rest of the treatment. So we do an assessment and evaluation for everybody, and that falls under our outpatient services. So when I think about outpatient services, that's where folks can enter our services traditionally. They come in, they talk with a licensed master's level person, and through that time they're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in their life. We might start talking about when did they start noticing that maybe they have mental health symptoms, or maybe a loved one started telling them hey, we're seeing something different for you. And they'll sit down and kind of talk about all of those different things and come up with maybe a diagnosis and evaluation, and then say, okay, here's what we would recommend moving forward. Through our outpatient program, we also do therapy, and that's kind of what most folks think about as far as talk therapy, group therapy, those kind of things, and that's with, again, licensed master's level clinicians. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is our crisis department. Our crisis department is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that is available to anybody on a walk-in basis. And what I like to say is that's here for folks who maybe they're just having a really bad day and they really need to come in and talk with somebody and see what's going on with them. And that might be that they might just need to come in and say, hey, I've got this crisis going on. And when we think about crisis, it really is, again, that moment when whatever is going on in your life at that moment has really exceeded your ability to cope. And we have folks here who you can come and talk to, and they're going to discuss what's going on with you and then talk a little bit about what's available to you. Through that, again, it's a walk-in basis. You just come in and you're able to talk to somebody. Sometimes that crisis intervention is all that someone's needs. Maybe just talking to somebody and kind of, expressing what's going on and then receiving some tools and resources is helpful, and that's what that person needs. Other times they might need ongoing treatment, and so we might refer them for ongoing treatment, whether that's with us or somebody else. Other folks tend to maybe need a higher level of care, and so we also have RSI, which RSI is in the main service location with Wyandot Center too, and that is a 24/7 crisis stabilization center, which also offers sobering beds. So if somebody's under the influence of a substance or intoxicated, they can come to the sobering bed, have a safe place to stabilize, and then get connected with resources. And then we also have an observation and a stabilization unit within RSI where folks can come. That's 24/7. So if those folks stay here and then they receive support and stabilization to help them. Sometimes that may be starting a medication. A lot of times it might be starting medication or resuming a medication or stabilizing in that way. Then we also have our medication management services. So we do have a psychiatric clinic with a psychiatrist and nurse practitioners. And for those individuals who have chosen medication to be part of their treatment, then we can provide them those medication management services as well. And then we have our community-based services. Our community-based services is case management. So we do have a lot of case managers. We have and they're usually bachelor's level individuals. And again, they're providing services in the community where people live. Because again, when we're looking at that holistic approach, At a mental health center, we want to be able to provide care and support to individuals, but also, recovery doesn't necessarily happen in these four walls. Recovery happens in the community. And so our case managers work with people in their homes, in the community, accessing resources, practicing skills, learning skills to help manage their symptoms while in the community, and really looking at all of those different things. And so it's all of those things together that really provide that comprehensive mental health care. And then, like I said, case management for some individuals looks different than for other individuals. So we also have specialty case management teams. For example, we have homeless services for persons experiencing homelessness. We have the Frank Williams Outreach Center, which is downtown on 7th Street. And Frank Williams Outreach Center is for folks who are experiencing homelessness. They can come there, get connected with supports. They can do their laundry. They could have their mail there. They can take a shower. They can get out of the elements, whether it's really hot like it is now, or in those colder months, pretty cold. But then again, they can get connected with people. They can receive support from people who've experienced homelessness themselves. And then we have our 2 case management teams down there that work with people experiencing homelessness, between our outreach team and then our supportive housing team. Because oftentimes individuals who are experiencing homelessness in particular, getting housed is one step in that journey. Helping to keep that housing is another step. And so we, again, provide specialty services for individuals who maybe have experienced a long period of homelessness, or what we call chronic homelessness, because maintaining that housing after you found it is so very important. So we have teams that can really dedicate to do that. We have specialty teams that help people with employment. Again, employment provides such an opportunity for so many of us. I work here not because of the paycheck I take home at the end of the month, but because I feel like I'm making a difference. I feel like I'm being able to help individuals. I feel like I'm being able to do something. And a lot of times that's what work does for us, right? Work gives us a sense of purpose. And so we have teams that help people find work and help with that sense of purpose, kind of giving back to your community, those kind of different things. We have teams that work with young adults, as we've all been there, right? Nothing magical happened at the age of 18 other than the fact that we were now legal and could sign our own papers. There was this whole new world that was opened up to us. And so individuals who are at that important part of their life, that transitional period where you're kind of going from this teenager to an adult, there's so many different things that are coming up with that. So we have a special team that works with just those individuals and navigating what does all of that mean while I'm also working with mental health. If I think back when I'm 18, and then if we put on that, a major mental health diagnosis on top of those things, that would feel overwhelming. And so we absolutely have some services designed for those, for individuals who are in that period of their life. So a lot of different things to really try to get at what are those needs.
Well, you guys do it all. You guys seriously, you do it all. There is something for everybody with different needs. Now, my question is, I'm dealing with some crisis. I know I don't have a mental health problem, but I just received bad news, or I witnessed a tragic accident. My thoughts are all over the place. I can't focus at work, but I'm not suicidal. Can I still come into this place and talk to somebody? Will you take us in, take me in?
Absolutely. Again, it's all about trying to fit the right program for individuals. So whether you're somebody who's had a life experience has happened, or an experience we've all just been through in the last year, going longer than a year now, right, with a pandemic that has changed our lives considerably. Many folks have experienced mental health symptoms that they may not have experienced before. We are here for anybody. So whether that's somebody who has had a life circumstance, maybe something has changed, a significant event has happened, they've lost a loved one, they've had a job change, or any of those different things that you experience as a crisis, because I don't define the crisis as a mental health professional. The person coming talking to me is the one who defines their crisis, not me. And so I'm here to help that person, and that's what we can do. And then we also have services for individuals who have some more significant symptoms, some of those things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder. We have services that can help individuals experiencing those too. So what I would say is, yes, if somebody is experiencing any kind of mental health crisis, or having a bad day, or life change has happened and they're just not sure what to do, come talk to us, and that's what we're here for.
Now, Christine, you mentioned walked in. People can walk in along the lines of what Mr. C said. Now, most of your clients, are they referred? You don't have to speak about this if you can't. Are they referred by their medical doctors, their physicians, or is it because they have great insurance and they look in the back? Let me make a phone call. Let me see if I can get some help. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So folks are referred to us in many different ways. There are folks who are self-referred, meaning that they decided that they need help and they want to come and seek help for themselves. Maybe a family member or friend said, hey, maybe we should see what we can get for you, or see what might be out there to help. We do receive referrals from doctors' offices, from the courts, from law enforcement partners, from other community organizations. So we receive referrals from all over the place. It doesn't have to be one particular area for folks to come in, and of course anybody can again come in without having to be referred. You mentioned insurance, which I think is a very important thing to be able to do. As a community mental health center, our goal is to provide the services somebody needs regardless of their ability to pay. Awesome. And so our goal is to again match the person up with the services that are going to be the most appropriate for them. And we work with individuals on a variety of different levels. If they have insurance, if we do accept major insurances, we accept Medicare, we accept Medicaid. If somebody doesn't have insurance, we'll work with them on a sliding scale fee depending on whatever their income is. The goal is, again, we're going to provide services that the person is needing and would benefit from, and regardless of their ability to pay.
And that was going to be my question. I just lost my job. I going with my thoughts all over the place, but I need help. I don't have insurance because I just lost my job. Will you take me?
Yes. We will take you.
I wouldn't take you.
We will take you, Martin.
I know who to come to now. Thanks. Yeah.
You come to us. No, again, as a community mental health center, that's also our mission, is to help this community, and not everybody who needs help can financially afford help, and we are here for those folks regardless of their ability to pay.
Well, okay. Well, I'm already here. I'm your client. And I was diagnosed with whatever, right? Is there going to be a person from your team available 24/7? Let's say one of your caseworkers that I'm working with. Can I just pick up the phone? Hey, Jeff, I need help.
Sure. So what we do offer is that we have a 24/7 crisis line. And that line is answered anytime, night or day, by a mental health professional. It may not be that person's provider. So when you come in for services, you typically have somebody who you primarily meet with, whether that's a doctor, a therapist, or a case manager. And that person may not always be available to you 24 hours a day, but we do provide 24/7 crisis response, which means that we have a line that's answered all the time, and you can call that for help.
Okay, so now I would like to see if you don't mind talking a little about how bullying, because even in Spanish now, throughout the world, the word bullying in Spanish is acoso. Acoso. So that's basically harassment, but we have adopted the English word bullying into the Spanish language throughout the world. They use the word bullying, whether it's in Spain, Venezuela, Mexico. It doesn't matter where you are. Now, I'd like to, if I don't know if you can speak about how bullying affects the mental health issues of children, how children that they feel different because they might be members of the LGBTQ community, how that affects them. How people who might be undocumented in the United States, and they live in fear many times, and that also affects their mental health. And what is going on? I know there's a lot of questions. How the racial issues that are taking place in our country, how does that affect our mental health? So bullying, possibly being a member of the LGBT community, being undocumented in this country, and the racial issues. I don't know if you can give us a little bit of a summary regarding that.
I think, and I will also clarify that I primarily work with adults, and so within our organization, Wyandot Center serves adults 18 and over, and we have a sister organization, which is PACES, and PACES serves children, youth, and families under the age of 18. So with bullying, what I would say there is, I have not looked into much with bullying as far as children, but here's where I think all four of those kind of fit into kind of a category, and it's kind of this idea of prolonged exposure to different things, right? So when you look at bullying, when it's ongoing, you feel like you can't get away from it, and bullying has taken on this whole new look too, right? With the idea of social media coming on board, you can't get away from it. It's always there, and there's all these different mediums by which someone can be bullied anymore, and so it's always constantly there. It's you turn on your phone and maybe there's a notification that comes up, or all these different things, and so you can't get away from it. Same thing I think with kind of someone maybe who's undocumented, that living in fear, not knowing if you're going to be, if someone might be discovered that you're here undocumented, are you going to be ripped away from your family? And then also that fear of accessing help, because as we've talked, accessing help is hard to do. And when you're worried that, you asking for help could lead to maybe, again, a situation where if you're undocumented, you may not be able to, someone discovers that or any of those things. Racial discrimination. Again, those prolonged experiences, and in our country, we know that we've had prolonged periods of discrimination that go back, hundreds of years. And then, with folks in the LGBTQ community as well. It's this idea of prolonged. Anytime you have this prolonged trauma, these prolonged things, it absolutely impacts your mental illness, because it's hard to get away from it, and if that's how you live your life, whether that's in fear. And I think that's where some of those four different areas kind of come together, right? Because if you're experiencing bullying, you may be undocumented and have that fear, or may not be accepted into your family or community if you are part of the I always say those way too fast. LGBTQ and racial discrimination. There's all this underlying fear that can come with that. And anytime you have those prolonged exposures of fear or trauma, they can absolutely have an impact of your mental illness.
Speaking of bullying, my niece, actually, she's a soldier in the Army. She actually helped me realize how bad we are towards our kids. By telling them, oh, mira el gordito, oh, you're too fat, man, you can't run, look at you, you're being outrun by everybody. Oh, look at your face, you look like this, you look like that. So, I think we traumatize our kids without even knowing or thinking about it, because that's how we were raised. And we were bullied as children. So she actually helped me realize that we are bad. We're some of the worst towards our own family members.
Absolutely.
Without even really realizing that.
Without even realizing
it. And thanks to her, I'm doing better.
Yeah.
Not with me though.
But you're not a child anymore. So.
Oh my Lord God. Oh my God, did you see this? He hasn't learned anything at all.
I'm trying.
So is the Wyandot Center a nonprofit organization?
Yes, we are a not-for-profit organization. We are a private not-for-profit.
Okay, now, I don't know if you can speak about this, but where did you get most of your funds to provide all the services?
Absolutely. As a private not-for-profit, absolutely we can talk about some of those things. So there are different funding streams we have as a designated community mental health center. So again, we are the designated community mental health center for Wyandotte County. So there's kind of this designation that comes with that. So as that, we do receive funding from the state to be the community mental health center, because there's regulations within the state of Kansas about about those facilities and what we are required to do, and what we have to follow too. So we do receive state funding. We do receive some funding from our county, so we do receive some funding from the Wyandotte County. We also receive grants. We receive different grants from foundations, or right now we have a grant from SAMHSA, so it's a federal grant. And then we also have any revenue, so fee-for-service revenue, so things like Medicaid, Medicare, fees that we may collect as part of the care we provide. So actually, you can always go onto our website, which is Wyandotte, BHN, and we are Wyandotte, 1 T, no E. So, because one of the things we are not affiliated with county, so we are a private organization. Okay. So we are a 501c3. We have a board of directors, but we are contracted with the state as a community mental health center. So we are actually not part of a government entity. We are not part of the state government. We are not part of the county government, which is an important clarification, because there are community mental health centers that are affiliated with their counties. Since we are a private organization, we are not. So when we look at our spelling, we are WYANDOT, and we don't do the T and the E. So.
Not to be
confused.
Yes,
that's right.
With the DOTTE POD.
That's right. That's right. But all of that's actually listed. We do an annual report, so you can see how much of our funding comes in, as far as percentage-wise, how much comes in for fee-for-service. But we're heavily dependent on fee-for-service and then state dollars.
Well, the reason that I'm asking all these questions is because we have a lot of ignorance out there in this world. I am guilty of being ignorant. I've been ignorant many times in my life, and I will continue to be ignorant.
See, you said it yourself.
Well, thank you, mister. You don't have to confirm it or affirm it. There are people that are very skeptical. People that they don't look at the facts or the apparent facts that before they make a comment about anything. They just act out of pure emotions, and we respect that too. Our demographics in Wyandotte County have drastically changed, and the Hispanic community has increased to a level where, if I'm not mistaken, in Wyandotte County, they are the largest minority community, and we also have a lot of ESL or non-English speakers also. Do you have any Spanish speakers in your staff?
We do. And when you say you're ignorant, I look at it as every day gives us an opportunity to educate and learn.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes I think it is,
I only know that I don't know.
That's right. And so we're always looking for those opportunities. How can we help people understand different things? Because I think it's just all about seeking to understand. How can I learn more about you and your experiences, and for you to let me know about that. Now, as far as Spanish speaking staff, we do, but we don't have as many as we would like. And I would agree with you that, it's important, since we are serving this community, that we do strive to have a workforce that is representative of this community, and the many different races, cultures, and language that are represented here. And we're always seeking to do that. So yes, we do have some Spanish speaking staff. Not as many as we would like, and we continue to try to increase that, but we also will provide services to any individual, regardless of, again, gender, race, sexual orientation, language, and we use translation if we have somebody who's coming to us who does not speak English.
Now, do you have accept volunteers here? Yes or no? How does it work? Because of the medical issues.
Yeah, so traditionally we don't have a lot of volunteers that work for us, but we're always looking at opportunities where we may be able to expand that. Primarily because, again, as a mental health professional, it is a little bit different doing volunteers, but we're continuing to look at some of those different things. But as of right now, we don't have a lot of volunteer opportunities.
How many employees do you guys have here?
Oh gosh, so again, when you think about Wyandotte BHN, which Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network is our parent organization, and so they represent the full entity of what we do. And then we're broken down from there to Wyandot Center, which serves adults, PACEs, which provide mental health services to youth and families. RSI is within Wyandot Center too, but RSI is another organization, and then we have Kimmelson Housing, and we have Envision Homes, and Kimmelson Housing works on housing housing development in the community, especially for folks with mental health symptoms. So all together, through the Wyandotte BHN family, I believe we're around 400.
Wow.
So around that whole Wyandot Center and RSI combined represented probably about 178 individuals that work for us.
That's amazing.
How many clients have you served,
Yeah.
or you serve every year?
Yeah, every year we serve approximately 4,000 to 5,000.
Wow. Wow, that's a big
That's
number.
just in adults, not
Okay.
not including kids.
Wow.
Wow, that's tough.
Mhm.
That's
Well,
tough.
And I know you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yes.
Have you have any regrets, or is there anything else that you would like to do differently to help our community?
Oh man, yeah. As far as regrets, I mean, I think you can always look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have done that better. Or, I wish we could have had this in place. And so I wouldn't say it's regrets. I mean, as far as being in the field, oh my gosh, I often think that sometimes I think the mental health field found me, because it's just, working in this environment, in this community, and Wyandotte County certainly found me. So as far as the field or this area or working in this community, no regrets, 100%. I think you can always look back and say, I wish we would have done this differently. I wish we could have, maybe looking back, this was not the best thing for us to do, and we could do that. And the mental health field is always evolving. I mean, when we think about community mental health centers came about in the 1960s because of the horrible treatment conditions that people with mental illness were experiencing at the time in those state hospitals and things like that. And it was really meant like, we need to get folks out of those state institutions where we can provide services to them in the community. So I would look back and, that's how we evolve, and our field will continue to evolve. There are certainly things that we continue to look for. There are gaps that currently exist in our community today. We spoke about one, having enough providers who are bilingual, and we can provide services to individuals in their primary language. That's a gap. We need to continue to look to see how we can do that. There's a workforce shortage in the mental health field. We have to continue to look at that. How do we continue to build a strong, dedicated workforce? Because we have a strong, dedicated folks who work here. Most compassionate and skilled individuals that I've had the pleasure of knowing. But we continue to see those things. We continue to see gaps in our services. There's just not enough housing opportunities. We have to strengthen some of our mobile crisis response. So there's a lot of things that I want to do, and that I see us moving in those directions. And that's what we'll do. So we continue to identify the gaps, and then how can we work together with the community to help build those bridges to help fill those needs.
Now, how does your budget, the limitations of your budget, affect the services that you provide?
Sure. That's a great question.
You don't have to elaborate too much.
That's
You don't have to
always the
elaborate
good
too much,
question.
Peter.
If you're listening to us, help out.
Yes. There is that need, because we do look at budget constraints, and we as a not-for-profit, we do have limitations, and we're always constantly looking to see, what can we do, because the needs out there are great, and so we do have to always continue to look, because there's a lot of things that we're, there's a saying, right, we can do anything with unlimited time and money. So we do have to look at that. One of the things that we try to do is partner. We can't do some of the things that we are doing without the partnerships we have in the community. But yeah, there's always the limitations of budgets, and we do advocate at the state level for funding. We try to see what are those different opportunities we have. But yeah, we have those limitations. Yeah.
Well, we can be here for
hours, days, maybe.
We have a bunch of questions that we can ask. However, is there anything else that you would like to express, tell
Our community.
Or community
Yeah.
that they should know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Martin, you said it best when the idea of, we're not alone. And that's what I would tell folks is you're not alone and you don't have to walk the journey alone. There are people who want to help. There are people in your community that want to help you, and Wyandot Center is absolutely here to be able to do that as well. And that's what I want folks to know is, prevalence of mental health symptoms, especially right now within this pandemic. That's one thing this pandemic has taught us is the need out there is great. Isolation is not good for human beings. We're human beings and we're meant to connect with one another, and isolation is hard for us. And that's what I would tell folks is if you're feeling alone, please know that you're not alone and you don't have to go through this journey by yourself. We are here to help you, as is this community. I don't think I've ever worked in a community that is that has this this desire to come together and help people and work together. And that's the one thing I would say is working here in Wyandotte County has taught me that it is a community, and so you don't have to go at it alone.
Well, we thank you for your time, thank you for your
so
passion
much.
for making a difference in our community. I know it's hard work, and but we thank
Because
you.
I'm sure you're making a lot of money. Probably making about $250,000. Is the Ferrari that is parked in the driveway?
That Ferrari's mine. I'm going to my vacation home later today.
We want to thank you from the
Yes.
bottom of our hearts for taking this interview, for educating us, me, to help me to eliminate the ignorance that I have in my mind. So let's give Christine a great round of applause.
Yes, thank you.
And remember, like Mr. C said, you are not alone.
No, you're not. And you heard it from the professional again. There is a community of people, professionals, that are willing to help out. All we need to do is ask. Come to them, ask, pick up the phone, walk in, do whatever we need to do in order to get better for ourselves, mentally healthy.
It doesn't really matter whether you are black, brown, green, yellow, blue. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you are to the left, to the right, straight. Okay? It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. Mental health issues affect anyone. Okay?
We're in this together, and you're not alone. Okay? Remember that you're not alone. Stay positive. Keep looking forward. Don't look back. Look forward. Till next time.
And remember that it takes a what?
It takes a village. It takes a village. We are part of this village. You are part of the village.
Thank you. And I constantly have to remind him what to say.
I want to keep him on his toes. Make sure that he's on this. Till next time.